You are listening to the Music Ed Mentor Podcast, where we teach music educators how to build, manage, and grow thriving school music programs and have long and happy careers. I am your host, Elisa Jansen-Jones, and today's episode is a little bit different format than our regularly scheduled programming. I really wanted to cut right to the meat of my discussion with Adam in this episode so that you can quickly gain this knowledge and apply it in your own classroom. So this is optimized formatting. Because what we're talking about today is your classroom, and more specifically, your classroom environment. To help me cover this subject, I brought in experienced choral expert, composer, blogger, and specialist in optimizing your classroom environment, Adam Paltrowitz. You can find his blog at choralclarity.com, where he also has some excellent resources on classroom management and student leadership. Right now in the United States, many teachers are in the throes of back to school, which can cause a lot of stress, anxiety, and excitement among the school music teachers. There are so many helpful posts out there about classroom hacks that you can use, and at first I wanted to jump in on that bandwagon too. But I decided that what was more important was hacking the environment in your classroom first, which is exactly how you determine which of the more Pinterest-esque hacks you want to try. After all, if you don't really need something to optimize your students' experience, why would you waste your time and money adding it to your classroom? Adam walks us through how to hack our classrooms by helping us answer some of the most pressing questions, like how do we optimize our students' focus, even if something has shaken them emotionally before they come into our classroom? How should we set up our room for optimal flow? What should our room feel like for our students, and how do we craft that feeling? Most of all, why is all of this important? But first, if you are looking for first day of school activities, look no further than Smart Music. You can use their free exercises and warm-ups before you even have to hand out books. Get your students sight reading and learning on day one. For more examples on how music educators are using Smart Music in their classrooms, just check out the Smart Music YouTube channel and follow their Facebook feed too. If you like stealing classroom hacks from other music educators, Smart Music could be your best tool to steal yet. Now, back to our discussion with Adam. The first thing I asked him, of course, was to introduce himself and talk about the why of our discussion today. Why is it so essential that we optimize our classroom environment? Here's what he had to say.
My name is Adam Paltrowitz. I've been a choral director, teacher for over 20 years. I've been at the same high school for 20 years, and I have built up a program that I'm very proud of that is all about student learning, student engagement, student leadership, and empowerment. And I write a blog on this topic, and I also write sheet music, write choral music for students mainly of this age level and community groups based on the same concept that I use in the classroom.
So why don't you go ahead and lead us off? Why do you think it's so important to focus on classroom environment?
Well, the classroom environment is the world that the students engage in. It is every aspect of what they feel when they are in the classroom. It's not about the material. The material is completely secondary to how they feel. Just like in life. I mean, we walk around the world, and it's whatever our thoughts and our comfort level, whatever we have there regarding our thoughts and comfort level, dictates what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we sense. So it's really, really important that we create an environment for the students where they can thrive, where they can love, where they can appreciate music.
Next, I wanted to know, where do we even start with coming up with our classroom environment so that we can hack it appropriately? Here's what Adam had to say.
Okay, well, let me start with the concept that everything that I'm talking about comes from the idea of of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The idea that the first thing people need are physiological needs, right? Food, clothing, shelter, water, and all that stuff. And obviously, we're not in control of that. We hope that the students come to our room with that. But then after that, next level is safety. And safety is going to a place where they feel comfort, where they feel like they know that they belong, in terms of safety, not in terms of that they feel welcomed and loved. All of that stuff comes once they feel safe and secure. And that means that they're not afraid of being bullied. They're not afraid of being pushed. They're not afraid of all of the physical things that can happen. And then that leads to love and belonging. And somewhere between safety and love and belonging is where we have to create this sense that everybody feels that they have a place. They know where they're going to sit. They know how the class is going to start. They know what they need to do to feel comfort in that room. And we have to create this sense of belonging for every student. And we create the sense of belonging by having guidelines, by having procedures, by having a system in place that students know, this is where I sit, this is how the class starts, this is what I do when I need A, when I need B, when I need C. This is what's going to happen if A occurs. This is what's going to happen if B occurs. And they become so comfortable in this environment that they get a sense, this feeling where they can then achieve, where they then want to be successful. So it all stems from the fact that we create tangible, clear things for them to then feel safe and feel loved and feel like they belong, so then they can thrive. And that's where the intangibles come from the tangibles.
Now that we have a good idea about setting up our classroom for optimal learning, I wanted to know what the next level is. How do we create a classroom full of meaning and motivation? Because if we can do that, if we can set up our classrooms to make that happen, our job is done. Here's Adam's thoughts on the matter.
Right. And the meaningful level comes from their level of engagement. And this is where we back away as a teacher and we start to be guides for their learning, because it's about students' active learning, not about our active teaching. And what I mean by that, to give an example, is that if you give a student an Italian aria, let's say you give them Caro mio ben, give them a simple Italian aria, you can teach it to them every week. Every day you can teach them a new line. You can go over the Italian and all that stuff. But if we've created this really positive environment where they really love what they're doing, they feel comfortable, they feel safe, and they love music, they're going to go home and go on YouTube and they're going to listen to 50 recordings on their own and come back and know it. So we have become the spark and the guide. And then they come back in and now we can coach them because they're really motivated to want to learn more from us. We're the expert guide who's going to offer new things, maybe teach them about flipping their R's, or teach them about the phrase shape, or to go over the context, the meaning, and so on. But if we make it that they don't know anything and we're going to teach them this stuff, then they come in and they're just waiting for us. We're like the gods of the classroom. And we don't want to be that. We want to put the learning on them. And this builds their esteem and then leads to self-actualization, where they start creating their own world of learning. They get motivated and sparked by things that we don't even have to create, because they're so motivated in our subject starting from being secure and safe. That's the starting point. And then we get to this final level where they are just motivated to do things well beyond what we're doing in the class. They're not motivated by getting the A or getting the 100 or by completing the assignment we gave them.
Of course, we couldn't talk about classroom environment without talking about the metaphorical elephant in the room. What happens if something impacts our students outside of our classroom and they bring that into our space? For example, what if a student gets hurt at recess right before they come into music? The whole class may have just witnessed their classmate bloody and hauled away on a stretcher. What happens when the parent of one of our students passes away? And this news not only affects the student, but impacts their peers as well. Both of these examples are things that have happened just in my circumstance last year. So I turned to Adam for help. How do we teach our students to cope with the excitement, the tragedy, or the upset that comes naturally with life? Here are his thoughts.
Sometimes the environment, the external environment, and by external, I mean everything outside of our classroom, impacts what's happening in our classroom. And that again shows that what our lesson plan is, what we hope to cover in terms of material, is far less important than the big picture. So every time there's something externally that impacts what's going on in our classroom is an opportunity for us to bring a life lesson into the classroom. So I don't think the idea is to say, well, guys, everything happened outside of the classroom needs to stay outside of the classroom. Let's work. Because that's just saying, well, forget everything that happened, you're safe here. Well, that's not how life works. So there's a way to sort of talk about, you might not want to talk about the fight that happened outside, but you might want to talk about how we have to compartmentalize things that happen in our life. And, sometimes we have an issue in a math class and we're struggling in math and we just failed a test and now we're in science class. And if we keep focusing on the math information and the trouble we had in math, well, we're going to bring it into science. So we have to find a way to say, there's nothing we can do about that activity right now. So how could we become present here? And we talk about the idea of presence. What does it mean to be present? What does it mean to be living in the moment and feeling what's around you? And so I would probably have a moment of meditation. And I don't necessarily mean real meditation, but let's take a moment. Let's think about what music means to you. Think about what choir means to you, and get them to become present in this moment and let them know that there's nothing that you can do here that can change what just occurred. And so that's kind of the bridge that I like to do, rather than saying, forget about what happened out there, because that basically tells them that how they're feeling doesn't matter, or what they're feeling doesn't matter. We want to tell them it does matter, but here is a life lesson that we need to work on.
Most of us got into this music teaching thing not to have this incredible musical experience or to practice our own musical skills, but really to just teach kids and to teach them about life, to impact them in a positive way. Well, I had to tap Adam for that as well. Adam agreed with me and expanded on the subject.
I think it's our first priority. I think it's our first priority as a teacher to be focusing on this, to focus on life and let music be the vehicle. The same way, and just going back one step, the same way I believe that we teach the guidelines for the classroom and the procedures through music as a vehicle. In other words, everything that we're creating, we're using something as the vehicle for teaching life, as a way of teaching guidelines, as a way of teaching procedures, as a way of teaching structure, because structure is the key to success in the classroom. And I just in the big picture, one of the mistakes, because we're talking about creating a positive learning environment, I think the biggest mistake that teachers make right off the bat is that they try to make it fun right when it starts. And they think that's what a positive environment is. And I'm arguing that fun is not the key. You want it to be fun, but it's fun once students are safe, once students feel like they belong and they feel like they're part of something special and they know what to expect. Um, so we're teaching life from the very beginning. Life is about being safe. We have to be safe first. Then we have to feel like we belong and loved. And then we have to feel like we can contribute. And then we feel like we're really ourselves and wanting to, learn and grow exponentially. So that's what life is. And we're using music. We're just using music as a vehicle to teach this way of life.
Next, I asked Adam if he does a separate focus activity at the start of class, just to set the environment for the day, like a meditation or silent counting or even a dance, something like that. Or does he just have his warm-up work as the focus activity? Here's what he does in his classroom.
I use the warm-up as focus. I try to always focus on a big picture. I don't like compartmentalizing things. So as an example, you could do a 5-note descending pattern. And first thing you could do is focus on humming, bringing your sound forward and getting everything on the lips or getting it in your head. Next thing you could do is focus on your breath support. Next thing you could focus on is some kind of internal thought or a color. Everybody focus on the color purple, or everybody focus on the most beautiful sunset that you've ever seen before, on the same 5-note pattern. So you could then focus on articulation. You could focus on vowels. You could focus on switching vowels. And so I like to show that one exercise that you do in kindergarten, you could do in 12th grade, you could do in college, and you could do the rest of your life with different focus internally.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Sorry, you could probably hear me smiling so big because, I love that. I love using visualization to focus them in on what they're doing. That is brilliant, Adam. So I also wanted to query Adam on behalf of those of you who may be listening to this episode later in your school year. Maybe things aren't going the way you want in your classroom. Maybe the students are unruly and you're frustrated and you're wondering why you got into this gig in the first place. Well, Adam has some great advice for you too.
Yeah, and you start from what's the problem, what's the situation, and how can I, as the teacher, implement a way to change that policy, to change that behavior, to change that routine. And it's not easy to do, but it's clear. Instead of getting angry at the students for doing something that we don't want them to be doing, we have to say, well, what can we do differently to create a new habit for success? And the important part of all this is that whenever you create new procedures, routines, or guidelines, we need to find a way to enforce it, to reinforce it, to introduce it, and to reinforce it. So if in January, after 4 or 5 months of class, or after the big winter concert, there were a bunch of things that were really just not working out. Students were going to the bathroom too much. They were leaving. They were talking. They weren't sitting up. Whatever the typical issues are that were kind of getting out of hand in November and December, right before the concert. In January, you need to say, well, I want to prevent the kids leaving for no reason, or I want to get better alignment and the way they sit, or the way they stand, or whatever it might be. And you have to say, well, how am I going to do this? Well, number one, I need to come up with some kind of new policy, but that's not enough. What's important is that you find a way to teach that policy, not just say the policy, but teach it. And how do you teach it? Well, you teach it through music. You don't teach it separate from music, which goes back to that idea of meditating, a meditative moment. The whole idea here is you have to teach it through the music. So you say, I'm just giving an example here. We're going to focus on how they're supposed to sit up in class. So You teach them level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 is standing up. Level 2 is sitting up. Level 3 is sit however you want. And you talk to them for about 2 or 3 minutes about this new, we're now implementing level 1, level 2, level 3. You show them what level 1 is. You show them what level 2 is. You show them what level 3 is. So everybody sit back at level 3 and you talk to them about something. Then you say, okay, we're gonna sing a scale. So everybody sit level 2. And you say, oh, thank you, everybody, for sitting level 2. That was beautiful. Well done. You sing a scale. You just sing for 2 seconds. That's it, a minute. And then you say, okay, sit back level 3, and you talk to them about something else. Say, all right, let's go back and let's do that scale again. Everybody sit level 2. And then you say, okay, now let's everybody stand level 1. We're gonna do some, we're gonna do that scale standing up. And we're using music. We're focusing on musical concepts with the scale. Same thing we talked about before, the 5-note pattern. But we're reinforcing this level 1, level 2, level 3 through the same one exercise without making that seem like we're drilling them. We're drilling them through music on a routine that we're really trying to fix.
Nice. And then that makes it more fun for them. And
Yes.
It's easier for you to be consistent as well.
Yes, we're training ourselves. That's good. Good point. We're training ourselves to remember what we're doing.
Yeah, that's
what we
right.
said we wanted to do, which I tend to forget sometimes.
Yeah, don't implement it and then 2 weeks later don't do it, because your students will hold you to it. And there is no shame in admitting that something's not working. We've already gleaned a lot of great tips from Adam in this episode, but I still had to know, because this week I'm setting up my classroom, what do I need to do to attack all the physical senses of my students? I wanted to talk ambiance. I wanted to talk about what our students should be seeing, hearing, and even smelling. And he appeased me, but he did make me back up a little, and I'm glad he did. He helped me figure out that I didn't need Pinterest to teach me how to hack my own classroom. I just needed a story.
Envision the way you want your class to look, to feel for the student and for you as the teacher. So I always say, well, let's make our story. What do you want to happen on the first day? How do you want it to look? Every aspect of how you want it to look. That includes, what do you want on the walls? It includes, where do you want the chairs seated? It includes, how do you want the students to walk in? How do they know where to sit? How does it start? How does the class start? What's the first thing you say? All of those things. Now fast forward 3 weeks, because now we're in a routine. How do you want the students to walk in? How do you want the class to start? What do you want students to do when they have to go to the bathroom? What do you want students to do when they forgot their instrument? All of these things. Where are they going to look when they're looking away from you? When they look to the left, what do they see? When they look to the right, what do they see? What if they forgot the rules, the guidelines of the classroom? Where are they going to look to see it? What does it look like? All of these things I'm thinking about before the first day. I have my guidelines, not because they sound cool, but because I've based them around what behaviors I want to be ingrained within my setting. So for me, the things that I have on my wall, I would like to have more things. I would say my weakness is my walls in general, but motivational things, motivational lines. So when they look, they're looking somewhere and see something positive. I would have guidelines that are really clear and really positive. Only rules, I call them guidelines, that are positive, but clear. I would also have consequences that are clear, and I don't want to say positive, but not threatening. I would have some pictures, maybe of past years, or pictures of concerts, things that are really engaging and nice colors, some things that are bright. In terms of smell, I don't really think much about smell. I probably should. because the choir room is right near the gym and the locker rooms. So there's probably some smells in there that we would like to get rid of.
Of course, a lot of our anxiety around our classroom and our classroom environment stems from wanting to be perfect, from wanting to do everything right. What he had to say about this particular issue was particularly insightful. Take a listen.
There are always going to be kids. I mean, in my program, there are going to be students that come out of my program and go to conservatories and become professional singers or musicians. Maybe they'll be orchestral conductors. Who knows what they're going to be? They might have more talent than I'll ever have. Maybe 5-10% of them could. I'm a high school choral director. I'm not a professional, making a full-time living, with the Philadelphia Orchestra. So there are kids there that could go on to careers far superior musically than I can, than I have. The point is not I have all the knowledge and you know nothing. The point is I have some experience and I can help guide you to find your best self. And I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. I'm here to give you the knowledge that I can give you. And what I don't know, I can help you find. And if you take that approach, you stop, because I've seen great teachers. I have seen teachers that you would look at and you say, they are great teachers until they might come across with a star student. Until they see that great student, then they start belittling that great student because they're intimidated by them. And it could be in fourth grade. It could be a fourth grade student that's made it onto Broadway. And now this teacher is intimidated by the student. And tries to prove that they're wrong and they don't know anything. Instead of saying, these kids are coming here and they want to learn, and I'm here to help guide them. And I don't have to know all the answers.
Right. We don't have to be the god of our classroom, like you said. Although, to be fair, I kind of do want to be a god.
It is fun. It is fun. But you know what? The higher up they put you, the easier it is for them to pull you down.
Oh,
and we
so
see
true.
that we see that in our society all the time, right? We lift up these celebrities. They're better than everybody else, and then they get ripped down to being, the worst things that our society has ever seen. Instead of just knowing that they're fallible human beings just like the rest of us.
Awesome. Well, Adam, it has been such a pleasure to chat with you about our classroom environment and how we can really be driving success for our students and for ourselves by just making a few little tweaks. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. Any final words? How can we learn more about you and what you do?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, for thinking of having me on your podcast. I really do appreciate it. I'd like to think of myself as very accessible. I have a Facebook group, which is called Choral Clarity, which I'd love to encourage people to join. And the goal of that Facebook group, unlike a lot of the other choral groups that are out there on Facebook, which I'm a member of just about all of them. The goal is to really take philosophical approaches to situations, like the same way that we're discussing here and in the blog. So we can really reframe what we do. So my closing comment here is that we have to know why we do what we do, why we make the choices that we make in the classroom. If a student comes up to us and says, just out of curiosity, why did you start with this piece? Or just out of curiosity, why did you take a slower tempo? Or just out of curiosity, why are you taking a breath here? Whatever it is, it could be musical, it could be about a procedure in the classroom. We have to know why we do what we do. And we have to explain it as best as we can to our students all the time. The more they're in the know of why we have rules, why we have procedures, why we start with a warm-up, why we're focusing our sound, why we're doing the music that we're doing, the more bought in they're going to be. And the more we have a why to our long-term success, what do we want our program to look like at the end of the semester, at the end of the year, at the end of the decade, at the end of our career. The more we can see a long-term goal and we're taking tangible steps to get there, the more successful our program will be, and in turn, the more successful our students individually will become.
I do hope that no matter what time of the school year you happen upon this episode, you gleaned many of the great ideas Adam has presented to us today. Remember, you can learn even more from him by following his blog, Choral Clarity, and joining his Choral Clarity Facebook group. Instead of our usual freebie download of a PDF checklist, guide, or book, I'm giving you a bonus episode because I really am setting up my classroom this week. And I polled some of you on Facebook and polled all of the Facebook groups for ideas I may want to implement. This bonus episode is full of these ideas to keep your classroom running efficiently and effectively and keep your classroom management skills turned up to an 11. Big thanks to Jody Hepp for being my guest for this special bonus episode. You will find it available on the show notes page for this episode with Adam. This is number 29. So go to smartmusic.com/blog and search for 29 to discover your free bonus Classroom Hacks episode. Remember that while you're there, you can check out what smart music can do for you in your classroom. I'd love for you to share in the comments your classroom hacks as well. Remember to subscribe to this podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and share it with your fellow music educators. Let's make sure everyone has the opportunity to learn and grow and create the life and career that they love. As always, my friends, keep teaching on.